Classic. Welcome all to the Tortillas and Takes podcast. This is the voice of the people's champ. That is Jeremy Gillen. And we are in full-fledged basketball. We are coming off of a game against Kansas State Wildcats and ahead of a game of the Arizona Wildcats. So we are in Wildcat hell right now. That used to mean a lot more in previous years, but maybe not so scary this year. And to talk about that, I brought on our Red Raider expert, Joe Lopez, all the way from the other side of Lubbock. What's up, Joe?
What's up, buddy? Wolford, Southwest. Yeah, out here in my lonesome by myself. Well, not by myself, but away from everything of Texas Tech. But 2 games between Wildcats. One game we got the dub, but man, I'm not too sure about that victory, and we'll talk about it. But coming up against another tough Arizona Wildcat team who all of a sudden has found some traction, to say the least, and now coming off of 5 straight conference wins, and now we're hosting them on Saturday afternoon. So, a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about, and the theme is not all wins are the same. But as you so aptly tweeted afterwards, they're not all pretty. They're not all pretty. And at the end of the day, dub's a dub, right? Or is it? Because I think something we talked about previously, and we've kind of groaned about is a better way to put it, lamented, is that the Big 12 this season just not been as strong, at least on the metrics as well, as we've been used to, as we've been comfortable with, right? Every game's a quad 1 game. That was kind of the selling point of Big 12 basketball. This season, that's kind of fallen short. Some teams are like Houston. Who was it? One of these bigger analysts on Twitter, analytics sites was saying about how Houston's celebratory victory over West Virginia is kind of cut short now that West Virginia dropped out from a quad 1 to a quad 2 because they lost. And so, but the margin there is so crazy that a team that drops from like a net 20 to a net 24, or whatever the short drop it was, is so significant in the mind of your, March Madness committee and this decision about what teams go where and what wins matter and what wins don't. And so the hope here is that maybe a little bit of Big 12 bias is in our favor, but we'll have to see when that push comes to shove. How do you feel about Big 12 play overall this season?
I mean, going into it, we look like the absolute strongest dog in this whole kennel of dogs in the college landscape. And it kind of got some early losses there from Houston losing to Auburn. We also had Arizona losing, early on to Duke and to West Virginia and a non-con, Oklahoma, and, all these teams like that. We were a dark horse to be potentially as a Big 12 contender, lost to St. Joe's, lost to Texas A&M, early on, doing things that just hasn't been great. Baylor losing and getting their tails kicked by Gonzaga. It just doesn't seem like a whole around conference that, is that actually far away from all the other conferences. The gap is probably a whole lot smaller as it sits, and it's still wide open to this point, and I think it's still going to make things interesting down the stretch how things have played out so far.
Yeah, so there are a lot of basketball left, right? We've got a pretty long season in basketball, a lot more room for grace than there is in football. But every game does start to matter when you get in a conference. People are paying attention. Nationally televised games, people are like, okay, jostling for position, both within conferences, but also externally trying to figure out what's the best kind of seeding that we can get. So that starts by getting dubs. Texas Tech, after having a really heartbreaking loss against Iowa State, goes into Kansas, goes into Manhattan. I can never remember the name of their arena. I was like, I'm going to roll that off my tongue, and then I just hit a wall. Goes into Manhattan, and all 3 of us were like, we're about to spank these guys. And that's what I was expecting. I said, this tip-off is going to be electric. We're going to be on fire the whole time. I don't care if there's 5 people in the stands in Manhattan. We'll be ready to go. And Joe, that did not look the case from from
No.
the tip off, buddy. I felt zero. I felt negative energy. It just looked for me the beginning of the game, and not to bury the lead here. We win 61-57. That's a close game. Regular Big 12 years, you're thinking, man, that's awesome. But Kansas State is one of the most expensive teams with no talent right now. I was reading something about how I think they're one of 4 teams that spent the most in the transfer window for basketball and have gotten really nothing out of it. And that's really hard and kind of scary whenever you think about other sports that could happen to, football. So
Yeah.
give us some of your thoughts early, because there's really nothing surprising about this first half. I mean, there was nothing. It was all surprising in that um, nothing really happened in the first half. In fact, Texas Tech didn't really look too good, trailing 33-31 at the half. First impressions, Joe. What's going on?
It almost felt like a letdown, right? You got up for an Iowa State team at home, and you arguably played your best basketball of the season, and then you would think that that trajectory would stay right around at least even kill whenever you travel, and it just didn't travel. That whole mentality, mindset, the how they attacked the Iowa State game and moved on into Manhattan. They left it here. They left it here in Lubbock, and they just took just their skill set to Manhattan. It was ugly. It was ugly, really ugly at times. I talked to Kerwin yesterday. He came by the dealership, so I talked to Kerwin, and me and him, chatted it up and stuff. And he said, I've been playing some basketball for a while now, and that was probably some of the ugliest basketball, as a whole, because Kansas State doesn't get, lost in that because they're playing pretty terrible as well. So, I mean, the players acknowledge it, and I would assume if Kerwin's talking about it in that regard, I'm sure everybody else inside that locker room has been talking about it in that regard. You're able to come out of there with a victory. You're able to get that win on the road, which you're 3-0 on the road in the Big 12, which is also very major for us, considering the gauntlet of teams that we had, and we're winning on the road. That's what matters. Granted, this last one was very ugly, and there's no way to sugarcoat that. But you still found a way to get it done. But
You
now you have to
did.
find you got to find a way to start being more consistent at home for sure, and finishing games whenever they are starting to be closer, because there will be some teams that come over here that are a little bit higher ranked. Houston, Iowa State was just here. Arizona's coming in on a nice little roll here, where every little bit counts, and some of these fundamentals where we've been lacking in some regards, that stuff is going to come to the forefront if we're not able to close out some of these games.
That's right. And there really isn't, and we'll circle back to that because I think you bring up a really good point about finishing the ugly games, especially on the road, right? So first half, really not much going, not pretty much the usual suspects in Darian Williams. Elijah Hawkins, I've really appreciated leaning a lot more into the role that we want him as a facilitator, but is getting his own points as well, right? 14 points on the night, but 9 assists, right? Really, really close to that double-digit assist number again. Elijah Hawkins kind of starting early. Darian Williams stepping a little bit more into the role. And of course, 7-15 is a little bit, I think, under his average percentage, but like trying to make shots, right? And the reason that was JT Toppin shades, echoes of himself. I don't know about you, Joe, but I think, and it may just be my like tunnel vision right now, but since that rolled ankle, he has just not felt the same. I don't think he's had the same bounce in his step. I don't think he's had the same like aggression under the basket. Uh, what about you? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think
I hate
there's
to
a
be a Debbie
little.
Downer.
Yeah, well, it's not even being a Debbie Downer. I mean, you're an ex-athlete, right? I mean, you played football at Tech. You coming off of an injury, right? It's not easy sometimes, especially if it's an ankle and your main job is to jump up in the air and snatch boards down. And all it takes is somebody's foot to be landed on, and that could almost be it for the end of a season. At case in point, Jomani Broom from Auburn, whenever he landed on homeboy's foot the other day, and
Yeah,
that's arguably
that,
one of the better players that's not named Cooper Flag, getting hurt and rolled up. And it's just understandable as an athlete. You get scared. I wouldn't say scared, it's just, I mean,
You're always
maybe,
thinking about it,
yeah, it's
especially
there in the back of your
JT
mind.
Toppin is thinking about the NBA. It's like, do I really want to risk my draft stock for this? Like everybody knows how good I can be. Like, do I really want? Is this one worth it? I think
Right.
every time he's going up to the basket, he's probably wondering, is this one, is this moment worth it? Is Kansas State really worth it for me to like get injured with? Right. And
Right.
so you get the win, sure, but JT Toppin, who's been like pretty much averaging double doubles every, the
Yeah.
season, only gets 6 points, only gets, 4 rebounds, and just doesn't take three, misses on the front end of a 1-and-1 a front free throw. I'm just like, oh my God, who is this guy?
Right.
But no hate, because you're right. Injuries, it's a lot of psychology whenever you actually heal up. It's a lot of psychology. And
Right.
my hope is that the team recognizes that. My hope and expectation is that McCaslin sees it and is just in his ear now of just like, hey, bud, like, I know you're worried. Like, if you don't want to go up under that, let's find an alternative way to get you active around the basket.
Right.
So adjusting with that with players who are that talented, right? So I was an ex-athlete, but compared to JT Toppin, I was nothing, right? So, um, so get
I was
those
talking
guys
about
what they
more on the
need.
injury aspect, if not
Yeah.
maybe the
Oh,
caliber
at this
player.
point, yeah. At this point, buddy, my ankles are paper mache. I don't even want to
Yeah.
take a step. I don't even want to take the stairs anymore.
Yeah.
But had a lot of production off the bench as well. So you're trailing at the half, getting Federico in there with JT Toppin's absence was Federico stand up. I'm just gonna call him F2 because it's a lot to this. I'm gonna mess it up at one point. Federico stepped up, man. 4 or 5 from the field, had 7 rebounds, 9 points, played nearly 30 minutes, right? Only topping out at 15 minutes. So Federico really stepped up and gave us a position, because when we've had a big man go down, usually that's it, right? But thankful for Federico getting integrated. This is a really good game for him. Another good game from a player not as stellar as last time was Christian Anderson, right? Christian Anderson, especially late in the game, uh, finding a point to be clutch to help kind of boost us onward in a dry spell. But Texas Tech really takes over defensively in the second half, right? We've seen a little bit of that throughout the season, but I think McCaslin is starting to say we cannot, like, Kansas State does not need to be putting this kind of points up against us. This team is not that good. Now, David Nagesson, Coleman Hawkins, Max Jones, Brennan Housen would like to have a word about that because they all played really well for Kansas State. Probably some of the best ball that they've played so far this season in terms of
Yeah.
having a good chemistry together, not just one guy balling out, one guy balling out. And that was what made me worried, is that, oh, shit, well, all of a sudden Kansas State's now a team again when we're playing them. Why did we waited till now? You couldn't wait one more game. But, having the guys step up defensively, right, in the absence of top end was huge. What do you think about I felt an energy shift kind of coming out into the second. What about you, Joe?
Felt the same energy shift. I mean, we held them to 24 points in the half. I mean, that's big. Any level, doesn't matter who you're playing. If you're holding them to 24 points in that half, I mean, that's massive. Because if you run that back by, if you do that first half and second half, was that 48 points on the game?
Yeah.
I mean, geez, that takes you back to vintage time with Chris Beard and Mark Adams kind of territory. Those 55, 60, point give up games and stuff like that. And you have a stellar offense to keep you and push you over that hump there. Defense did step up the last couple of games, even in the Iowa State game to a degree. I mean, the intensity was there, and it kind of felt like the second half was as close to the Iowa State defense as we saw collectively in the game there. So kudos to them. Christian Anderson, like I said, man, he's coming into his own on the offensive side. We've all seen it, and now he's starting to take a whole lot on the defensive side as well. And then that bodes well for this team down the stretch. We're 5 games into the conference and we still have 15 to go. So the progression that he's made over that time span, I mean, I think that's going to help us out a whole lot, when those games start counting big time.
That's right. And we really saw kind of the I was so, like, when we got about halfway through the second half, seven markers, something like that, we had that amazing string of plays with Federico giving it, and then Elijah Hawkins hit that 3. Anderson had that layup and one, right, and then Anderson gave it to Federico to throw down, right. We had a good dunk there. Basically got on a 13-0 run, and at about 7.5 minutes left, I was like, see ya. We out of here. Like here it is, right? The defense is coming together. Offense is now feeling wild. But Kansas State said not so fast. Actually, Coleman Hawkins said not so fast, right? A couple of Kansas State players step up, but it was about the 5 minutes or so. All of a sudden, we were leading at 51-44, and then it was all tied up. Coleman Hawkins made that jumper, 57 all. And that's when I was like, we may be in a little trouble here.
Yeah.
So Texas Tech has had a really hard time. What I'm going to key in there is that Texas Tech has had a really hard time sustaining momentum this season, right? It seems like we can never just put a quality opponent away, whether it would be Iowa State, whether it be Kansas State, whether it be anybody with a recognizable name. It's been really hard for Texas Tech to find one of those spurts and then build on it, maintain that, right? Can't put the boot on the neck or whatever it is, pedal to the metal, your metaphor of choice. Texas Tech's had a really hard time doing that. The good news is that jumper that Coleman Hawkins had was the last basket Kansas State had for the rest of the game. For 5.5 minutes, Kansas State really tried to get a basket and could not. You were seeing echoes of 2019 Chris Beard defense. Like I said, it was like Kansas State could not pay their way to a basket.
No,
the problem with that,
they were even late in the shot clock to get shots up.
Yeah, they were
sound defense.
They were trying everything. It wasn't just like it was not these crap shots. They had decent shot selection, just couldn't make it happen. Great defense, good pressure, good to keep Kansas State moving. Mostly staying in, one-on-one, but when they zoned up, it was actually pretty effective. The problem with that run, Joe, because it was 57-all, and we kept it at 57. But if you remember, I said the final score was 61-57. So we got 4 points. So we got two more baskets in that same time frame. Is this something to be concerned about? Because what we kind of what I want to circle back to is that talking about finishing ugly games, right? It is an amazing thing to keep people off the board for 5 minutes in basketball. That's insane. That's that's elite level defense. But if you're not scoring but 2 buckets in that same amount of time, is this worrisome, or should we just kind of let this one roll off our backs?
I think you should let it roll off your backs. I mean, I think you're allowed a game like this, and I don't think we've had some sloppy games this year, but it hasn't quite been to this extent with the players that we have, especially JT Toppin being in the mix and in the fold, and Christian Anderson where he's at, just where we're at. We just haven't had a game like this. So I think this is one you can just let slide off the back. Now, if it happens on Saturday afternoon, then then that opens up a different discussion. But we need to start playing and closing out at home, especially. We used to have one of the toughest atmospheres, and maybe the students being back here is going to help a whole lot with that. But we'll see. But this is the first game that we're going to need to have to come to ready to play and get ready to knock it out. Whenever that knockout punch is available, we have to hit. We have to hit.
That's right. And to wrap up this Kansas State victory, because that's what it was, Joe, give me your player, the player that surprised you the most, or the player you were most happy. Give me your MVP, and then give me the player that was kind of like kind of disappointed by this performance.
I think the easy choice for the disappointment is going to be JT Toppin, but you don't know what's going on. He's just like you said, a double machine all year long. At least 15 and 10. And that's crazy. He was only on the court for 15 minutes. It's just crazy to me to see his stat line like that, and I think that's a little bit of a disappointment. Don't know exactly the reasons why it's like that. Maybe it could be that alien ankle. Maybe it's in his head. Who knows? I'm not here to speculate any of that stuff. It just, it is what it is. And then I'm going to give it to Christian Anderson. I mean, I mean, he's the progression. I mean, there's so much you could say about this kid. Yeah, maybe not showing up on the stat sheet, and points and things like that, but he does all of the other stuff very, very well. The moment doesn't seem like it's too big for him. I mean, he's in these games late. I mean, when was the last
Yeah.
time you saw a true freshman in meaningful games late in the game and for long minutes at a time? I mean, what was that, 30
Michael Jordan, I
minutes?
think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just this is a centerpiece of what this basketball program is going to be over the next couple of years, and it's glad to see him flourishing already. It just means that he's a hell of a player and he's being coached up right, and that's a recipe for a good player. So, Christian Anderson MVP, and then disappointment JT Toppin, just because he didn't have a JT Toppin kind of game.
Yeah, and that is disappointing for everybody. I'd say I like those picks. I would say mine are a little different. Actually, we didn't pick any of the same. My disappointment for this game was actually Chance McMillan. I think that Chance, and there's a couple ways you can look at this. I think one of the ways is that Chance, you're one of the best. You were the best percentage-wise 3-point shooter in the nation last game. At the beginning of last game, that's just trickled down since that stat came out, which is always like, commentators curse. It's like, just one of the best 3-point shooters in the nation. And then he can't buy a three. It's like, what is going on?
Just like the commentators against Iowa State. Oh, you got a 92% free throw shooter at the line or a 91%. And then, right. they rim out the first two. So, yeah.
That's right. I get like that. Thanks for that, buddy. But outside of that, it just can feel like Chance's it's an awkward position as somebody who's expecting a little bit of him to see, okay, he seems, he's not like dragging his feet. He's active. He is a part of the play. It just feels like he can't, in this game, it was feeling like he just couldn't put it back. Couldn't get it. He got one basket, right? Couldn't really, 1 or 2 free throws, not really rebounding well. This is a player that for me, when we started the season, I was like, there's kind of your core guys. You got Darian Williams, you got Chance McMillan, you got Kerm Walton. And those 3 guys have got to be stepping up in games where there are not people stepping up. Thankfully, Darian Williams has proven to be that. Kerm Walton's kind of trailed off. Chance McMillan starting to be kind of a little streaky. And so I think if you want to make a meaningful run in the tournament, 2 of those 3 guys have to be active. And I hate to see that 2 of those 3 guys are becoming streaky and inactive. So disappointing game from Chance McMillan, but I have all the faith that he can bounce back. I'm also waiting for Kerwin Walton to have some kind of explosive game where he just does Kerwin Walton stuff.
I'll hold my tongue till after Saturday afternoon, and then that's whenever I will make my peace with something that me and him had a talk about on Saturday. So, but I'm not trying to put a jinx on that or anything.
That's right.
Like
Can't do it. Can't say it.
So the world will know.
Walton's retiring.
The world will know Saturday. Yeah. Then I'll just leave it at that.
He's been hedging bets. He's betting against himself. He's a millionaire now. But I never said that. My MVP of the game for like a player that stepped up, did more than they were asked. Federico, man. He just looked a lot more fluid in this game. Didn't look out of place. As soon as he got that, the toss from Anderson, slammed it down. I was like, here are 2 guys that nobody was really talking about like before the season, and they're out there having a blast. And the people in Manhattan hate them. Hate these 2 guys. Boo! Get out of here! You guys suck. And somebody in that stadium was saying, somebody in that arena was saying, why do they always have to have a guy go off against us? Because I feel like we're always saying that at the USA. But 61-57, ugly, but you got it. And most importantly, and Joe, very insightful, you got it on the road. The road wins matter. I don't care what quad it is. It's hard to win on the road, people. And we got a Big 12 road win. Now we return home. And returning home to a game that we circled early on against Arizona, one of the premier basketball teams. You could just say a blue blood, because Arizona has had a dominating basketball team for some time now. It is what their school is known for. When Albert and I went to the Arizona football game in Tucson, it was what their fans were talking about when we were at a football tailgate. It's what they love. It's what they care about. the Wildcats been a little bit weird this season, right? Joe, do you want to give us a little bit of a recap about who these Arizona Wildcats think they are?
We thought they were frauds early on. I mean,
That's
like,
right, we did, because they
who the
were.
who the hell who is this basketball team? Talking, it was like almost all the smack talk that Utah had preseason for football, like, oh, we're going to run the Big 12, and ultimately what happened. It felt like they were on the same kind of trajectory as Utah's football team, and I don't like making that reference, but it did feel that way to a degree. Losses early. I mean, the loss to Duke wasn't really a bad one. I mean, because it's Duke, right? So that's just like, well, it's Duke, But the losses, the beatdown that Wisconsin gave them, Oklahoma was playing really hot at the time, beat them. The overtime loss to West Virginia, the loss against UCLA. I mean, these games, it made this team look fraudulent, like super fraudulent. But like I said, it looks like they've kind of got their feet underneath them, and then they've been making and playing, some better basketball. They do have some really good players there. Caleb Love, transfer from UNC, KJ Lewis, which once was a highly sought after recruit by the guys here in Lubbock, Texas. They just they have talent all around them. It's like you said, it's a blue blood itself. And it's going to make for a very interesting game on Saturday, but it's one of these games that you got to have at home.
That's right. I was muted there for a second. Lost my train of thought here. 6-5 going into the conference. You're looking at this Arizona team like, have y'all ever played basketball before? Garbage. And you're going to come into this conference, the Big 12, and you ain't going to do diddly winks. You actually played a Big 12 team and you lost in overtime, you nerds. And the one that we weren't even impressed by. Well, Arizona decided to get it figured out. They played Samford and they said, I'm gonna exercise my demons. 96-64. Oh, we got Central Michigan. I'm going to exercise some more demons. I'm going to invite the demons back in, and then I'm going to exercise them again, right? 94-41. Well. It's time to play a little Big 12 basketball, and 90-81 TCU victory. And then the interesting ones started rolling in, right? They had a 72-67 victory over, at the time, number 16 Cincinnati, a 75-56 revenge game against then number 21 West Virginia. Everybody was like, West Virginia is really good now. They beat Arizona. Arizona took that personally. A really impressive win against UCF 88-80, and then the most recent a win against number 25 Baylor 81-70. So Joe, they turned it around. This Arizona team starting to look like the Arizona team that everybody was afraid that they would be. Yeah. A couple of caveats for me as I looked down the schedule, I saw their games. Number 16, Cincinnati. The ranking didn't mean anything. Cincinnati has been an absolute dog water. Sorry, Bengals. Sorry, Wildcats fans. But your school's bad and you know it. Maybe they'll turn it around. Not likely. West Virginia, that was an impressive turnaround game. That's a coach who said, you got me last time, but I ain't going to happen again. And he proved it, right? The UCF and Baylor victories are also really big wins. That UCF team is sneaky good. We'll get a taste of that later. We'll do a much better preview when we play them. And then Baylor, of course, any Scott Drew led team is won. Any victory you have over Scott Drew, you're going to celebrate because it's a good team. Stacked, it's deep. Scott Drew is one of the best coaches in college basketball right now. Good victory. So Arizona is coming into Lubbock, Texas, looking to continue this win streak, looking to make up for the loss in football, looking to just declare that their stamp. We're stamping this cactus shit in right now. The Saguaro is ours. Is what they're saying. They want it back. They want that. They want the trophy back. Joe, what are your first thoughts about this game? Where's your head at? Are you afraid? Are you stoked? What's going on?
I'm not really afraid, to be completely honest. I mean, they look just about par with what Texas Tech implores. They have a 8-man rotation. They don't have like super size. They have one guy. I think he's 7 feet. And Henry, I don't know how to say his last name, so I'm not going to butcher it. But I know his first name's Henry or Henry or whatever.
Henry.
Henry,
Henry Besar.
yeah, that guy from Madrid. Anyhow, 7 feet tall. Everybody else is going to be 6'9" or under. Like I said, 8-man rotation. They do have some veteran leadership in the backcourt, but which we have veteran leadership in the backcourt as well. So it's not like they have a really good player in Caleb Love. Elijah Hawkins is starting to come into his own as in our point guard room here. Christian Anderson's emerging also as that other secondary point guard as well. They have some other guys. I think Toby Aqua or Awaka. I don't remember how to say his last name as well, but he's their leading rebound getting guy, and he's going to be the one probably with Toppin for a majority of the game, or Toppin will be on him as well. So I mean, I don't think it's necessarily like we thought early on this gauntlet of a team. Yes, they are a very talented team, but this doesn't feel like you know the 96 Bulls coming into Lubbock, Texas on Saturday afternoon. If you're asking me, for full transparency, it's just they're a very good basketball team, and when they're on, but they are a beatable basketball team like we've seen this year. So.
That's right. Ain't nobody going undefeated in the Big 12. Promise you that. I promise you that. Another important name on the Arizona roster, KJ Lewis. Maybe somewhat familiar to all you guys from 2 years ago. In running in the recruitment cycle, we were looking at KJ Lewis, basketball player out of El Paso. Very interested in Texas Tech. Arizona ended up swooping in and taking him, but he's ended up being the third leading scorer on their team as a sophomore. Gets very meaningful minutes, right? But their game runs through Caleb Love, runs through Jaden Bradley, right? It runs through the big guys, Townsend, Vesad, stuff like that. So, but you're right, Joe. At the core of it, Arizona is just a regular basketball team that's just playing really well right now. And as we know of any team that goes on a run, that run eventually ends. And I think that something very interesting about this game is that they don't look too terribly different from Iowa State. They may be a little bit shorter, I think a little less height on their team than Iowa State, but they play a lot of the same ball. And what's interesting to me, I can't wait for the line to come out because right now I don't think I can't find one. But the ESPN matchup predictor, which is kind of baloney, but still fun to look at, and everybody looks at it. Last against Iowa State, 50-50 here in the old USA. Against Arizona is pretty much 50-50 again. So what is fascinating to me is, and a couple of analysts have mentioned this, is that Texas Tech gets no love from AP voters to be in the top 25, yet is consistently against really good teams considered to either be favored or right at that line. That Texas Tech is a good basketball team, and we kind of shrug that off. And I think there's a lot of appropriate reasons that we do that, especially after games like Kansas State. You figure that matchup predictor would go 25% Texas Tech after that game. But the reality is that Texas Tech is a good program. Texas Tech has a good lineup, and we're at home. And people have come to respect Lubbock, Texas as a hard place to play away. So Joe is very much right, man. Hope them students show out. Now, Arizona could very well go off in this game and keep the streak going. But Joe, tell me why they're not going to.
They're not going to because they're about to walk into the hornet's nest. We're going to have all of our students back on campus. This is the first meaningful game with all of them back on campus since the break, and it's going to be loud and rowdy in there. And this is going to show, the Arizona Wildcats why the USA is one of the hardest places to play in, not only in the Big 12 but in the country. I think it's going to be rocking in there, and I think this is going to be one of those kinds of old Kansas coming to Lubbock early on in the season or late on in the season. And, they're well better equipped, I guess, players wise, and it's even kill now. But I just think this is going to be where the actual environment of the Texas Tech faithful is going to push this team next level. And I think you're just going to get better play from players like Chance McMillan and a JT Toppin when bigger games like this matter.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Arizona has not played anybody on the road. They played West Virginia on the road, but that was a vendetta game, so that's a wash. But they
Right.
have enjoyed a lot of games at home. The
Right.
most important game they played on the road was Wisconsin, who is a good team, but not 103 points good. And Arizona fell apart. Arizona has yet to be truly, I think, challenged on the road by a team that has depth and has a really strong defensive identity. And Texas Tech is both of those things, right? Barring JT Toppin just not playing this game, which if I'm Toppin, if I'm the staff I'm talking to him, if I'm Toppin, this is one I definitely want to show out at because this is what everybody's going to be watching, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be for Arizona or whether it be for like, hey, what is Texas Tech this season? This is the game. Like this is what people want to see. And so Texas Tech, if I'm going to give a key to the game, turnovers. Limit your turnovers, man. If I meant to bring this up against the game against Kansas State, we are trying to set a record for most games won with a negative turnover margin. I don't understand what the turnover bug has on our team, but I'd like it to go away. I don't know if you've noticed, Joe, but most of our turnovers are pretty silly in terms of like, oh, we're dribbling and we're just not really paying a lot of attention to the ball, or we just try a really lazy pass to kind of keep the motion going on the offense, and teams just capitalize on it. But despite that, despite how many turnovers as a team we've had, and I would bet money that it's one of the worst in the Big 12, is that we're still playing close, right? We're still keeping it close. We're still playing good defense to make those margins really thin. But if you're going to play a team like Arizona, who's on this hot streak, you got to play near perfect. And near perfect means, man, you better eliminate the turnovers as much as possible. But for me, if Texas Tech is looking to win this game, it starts with the turnover battle. And that's going to be a really hard one when you got players that are playing through some injury. What say you, Joe? What can Texas Tech do to like schematically win this game?
I mean, you hit it right. And just to touch on the turnover thing, I mean, I was watching the game as well. A lot of it is just mental, right? They're getting too far in and you're trying to do a little too much. I mean, fundamentally, it's just don't overcomplicate things. We talked about this in the preview, not to make this game into something that it's not. Just play your game. And, if you think about it, you try to stay under 15 turnovers per game, right? That's at least a solid number where you're at. And I believe McCaslin wants it under 10 a game or even lower than that. We had 14 against Kansas State, but it felt like we had 53. I mean, it just felt like, the way we were playing, like, some backyard or schoolyard basketball, and just nothing was just getting ahead of ourselves, either on a fast break, not pulling it back and trying to make a play when there's three people back there and only two of us, or just trying to get in the lane, you lose your stepping and still trying to make a pass without, being sound with it. It's just little mental mistakes with what our players do with the ball in their hands that I believe can be corrected. There's that's mental. That's all mental. Everything up there is mental. Just slow it down. Don't make it into something that it shouldn't. So for me moving forward, I mean, fundamentally sound basketball is just, what do we say when it's football season? We want complementary football. This is the same exact thing that we want for this basketball team, but it's all just based on the fundamentals of the game itself. So, I mean, you hit it right. Just fundamentally sound basketball is just what we need to do. We don't need to make this game into something that it's not.
McCaslin hired the staff that he did to promote a culture of good defense and transitional offense. And transitional offense is something that we've kind of lacked this season. And that's hard because Arizona is also pretty turnover prone. And so one way that we can utilize the turnover differential is by when we get a turnover against Arizona, capitalize on it, right? You've got guys that can run. Federico showed that he wants to get out and run, right?
Yep.
Up and down the bench, you got guys that want to go down and score. So I think leaning into the identity that you are trying to build in this program, it starts with turnovers. It's kind of a really weird and awkward thing to say because like kind of bad at turnovers, but we have created a lot of turnovers too. So two teams that have a turnover bug. The one that beats it's the one that wins the game. Joe, do you have a prediction for this absolute blockbuster of a matchup here in Lubbock, Texas, January 18th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, the superior time in the United States?
I do have a prediction for this game. I do think it's going to be close. I do think it's going to be one of those that, it's going to be a nail biter, but I think it's going to be a nail biter because both teams are just play up to each other's standard. I think they feed off of each other in that regard, but I just think that Tech makes enough plays down towards the end of the game. Defense, holds steady. The crowd just turns the USA into an absolute zoo. And I have Texas Tech winning 72-66. Yeah, 72-66 at home on Saturday afternoon.
You think we hold in Arizona 66 points? That's crazy. Whoo! Whoo! Hold on. Where's the banner?
You heard it here.
There it is, baby. You heard it here first. And also, Albie stinks. Ooh, that guy sucks. All right. Yeah, we got a lot of good ones in here. Stay wrecked, people. That's let him cook. I can't even talk. Spicy. Oh, I missed this one when you said it. Damn. All right. Hey, so,
boy, howdy.
Ticker down there because it's important. What do you say? 72-66? 71-66? Yeah.
72-66. 6 points.
6 points. Damn, that'd be nice. I'm not as optimistic as Joe. And let me tell you why. Because I had sat through an entire Iowa State game where I thought we were going to win that thing, and we fell apart at the seams at the end. Free throws. We didn't even talk about free throws at all. And I don't want to because it wasn't really ideal in the Kansas State game either.
Part of the fundamentals.
Part of the fundamentals. And Joe touched on it. For me, Arizona's playing really good basketball right now. I hope that means that they will get a little ahead of themselves and on the road make mistakes. I think it's going to be close to. I think that our team, I think Texas Tech is ready to play up to their potential. I think that everybody recognizes Kansas State was ugly, and we need to kind of adjust from that. But at the same time, you can't just turn around and adjust against like the number one team in the Big 12 right now in terms of just dominating opponents. So. 71-67. No, both these teams have too much firepower for me. I think we're going to actually get up into the 80s. I think we'll be in the 80s. I think Texas Tech will actually lose by 2 points, and I think it'll be something dumb like 88-86. So
I want to reassess real quick.
Oh yeah.
I want to change. Yeah. I was looking at their last couple of games.
Yeah.
And I mean, 96, 94, 90, 72, 75, 88, 81 in their current win streak of the 7. So, I mean, I would change it to 82-76. Good guys still a 6-point win, but just, 10 points more.
Deuce it up but give them a 10-point swing. Yeah. All right. Real nice, Joe. Okay. See how I'm nice and I let you change it? Howard would have said, shut up, and it kept going. Shut up, you stink. Ooh, this guy sucks. Stand in your business. Okay, so both a high-scoring affair in Lubbock. Joe has the good guys winning via the virtue of honor and Arizona State making the right mistakes at the right time. I have the good guys losing a close one because I just have not seen progression in the fundamentals. I've seen a regression. And unless it gets changed pretty quickly, I'm not going to have faith against a team that's really hot right now. Basketball stinks. Because the teams that are hot are usually winning. So one for win, one for loss. But either way, Texas Tech's playing basketball. this Saturday,
Mhm.
1 p.m. In the USA. Students, if you're around, you should be. Show up. Classes started Saturday. You don't have any homework. There's no such thing as a first week of homework. If there is, drop that class and find a better professor. But Joe, do you have anything else to say to the people?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Show up, students out there, back in class. We need all the support. I'd love to be there. Unfortunately have to work, because that's what adults do. So yeah, but I will show my support at work watching the game. But no, nothing else, to touch on, just like I said, 5 games into the conference, we haven't won a home game yet in conference, which is probably one of the weirdest stats that Tech has this year, not, winning a conference game up into this point. So
Mm.
we need this one to continue that trajectory, to continue stacking success before, that real big major roadblock of Houston, in a couple of weeks, when we travel down to H-Town. So got to get right.
Got to get it right. All right. Well, I don't have anything to say. So that is Joe Lopez, aka the Texas Tech expert, aka TTU Presidente. He's got so many names. I can't keep up. This guy's everywhere. This is the People's Champ. You've been listening to the Tortillas and Takes podcast presented by our illustrious leaders, the 1012 Network. I got some Tres Leches cake to eat, y'all. Stay wrecked, people.